want to thank everybody who's taking time out of their day to listen and download and just view our episodes and subscribe. And definitely people who haven't, definitely subscribe to us. We're on Stitchers, iTunes, Podomatic. We have a YouTube channel where you can get the video episodes of each episode. You can kind of put a face to the voice. And I hope that people take something from this. Our slogan is provoke thought, and I hope that we've done that, and I hope that we continue to do that. I know from just being the host and then being able to have these awesome guests on, I've definitely have had thought provoked and definitely feel like I've benefited a lot from doing the show and sharing my perspectives, but listening to other people's perspectives. I think too often we're too quick to share our opinions, and we don't like to listen as much as we like to talk. So the cool thing about this podcast, it's a good time to sit back and just listen to people talk, and hopefully you get something from it. And I know that I definitely have. I think my listening skills have gotten better just sitting back and listening. And I think it's pretty easy when you're listening to somebody that you find interesting. But I think I haven't agreed with everybody on the show, and I don't think everybody's agreed with me. But I don't think that's the point. I think everybody's has a common goal of basically trying to mold their perspectives and opinions, and sometimes that means listening to somebody or somebody's opinion that you might not agree with, and after it's all said and done, you might actually take something from that perspective or opinion, even if initially you didn't agree with it. So I think that's beneficial. This journey has been just super fun to be able to get people that I'm a fan of, filmmakers, authors, philosophers, people, doctors that have been on the show, and people that I'm just a fan of their work and stuff, and to be able to sit down and have a conversation with them. I think the art of conversation is almost lost at times, it seems, in our generation, and I think in future generations. I think with just media, social media, and stuff like that, we're just constantly distracted, and we really don't take, and we're just super busy. So it just seems our fast-paced lives don't give us much time to sit back and actually just bounce ideas off each other and actually enjoy people's company. So that's what we hope to do on the show, and we hope that people enjoy this journey as much as we have. We have a bunch of awesome guests coming. Like I said, subscribe to us, so then when these shows come up, you'll be the first ones to know. And hopefully we'll get some shirts out soon too. I think that might be in the future. And but you can always look for Theory 6, the song The Ripple Effect, and other songs that are out on iTunes and Amazon and Shazam and everywhere else. That's an easy way to support the podcast. The Ripple Effect is the theme song to this show. And so check that out and keep listening. And like I said, we have a bunch of really awesome guests coming up next week and in March and in April. So definitely just keep listening, stay updated, and we'll see you next time. Tweet us, like our Facebook page, and then give us some comments and suggestions. And we appreciate everybody who takes time to write us or whatnot. So do that, and we'll see you next time. Enjoy the show with Lee What's up, everybody? Another episode of the Ripple Effect Podcast. Today we got a author, activist, comedian. Some people might have seen him. He's a guest on RT's shows like Abby Martin's Breaking the Set on Boom Bust. You see him on TYT, the Young Turks, once in a while. He has a popular online channel, and he does a show called Moment of Clarity. He's written some books. He's a political comedian, which you don't see too much anymore. So I just want to thank Lee Camp for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, awesome. Hey, just real quick, I just wanted to get, well, you did a video today about Bill Hicks, the 20th anniversary. I'm guessing he was obviously a huge influence of yours, and probably one of the, I think you called him a philosopher, and it's funny because me and my co-host Dave have talked about it, how he almost was as much of a philosopher as he was a comedian. And you don't see so much of that anymore. And do you think that's one of the reasons why you've become so popular, because you are one of the few comedians that are, basically speaking your mind and talking about social and cultural issues and not, holding back, and not that, Hetchberg and Stanhope and some of these other comedians aren't good. But I think people, we kind of miss a comedian like Hicks or Carlin and stuff, and who kind of give us a great perspective on current events, but also make it funny, because I think that's a good way of kind of getting a message across. Do you think that's one of the reasons why you've gotten such a good following?
Well, thanks. Yeah, it is the 20th anniversary of his death, and he was an influence, and he was an amazing comic, and I agree, almost as much as a philosopher. I mean, a lot of great comedians have that kind of philosopher feeling to them, whether it be Carlin or Hicks or Lenny Bruce or a lot of great ones. And actually, it's funny that you group Stanhope in with the ones that kind of don't, but I actually think he's closer to a Hicks than, say, a Hedberg. And as you said, I wouldn't say either of them is less funny because of it. They're both incredibly funny. I just think there's room in comedy for those who are doing what Stephen Wright and what Hedberg did, and those who are doing something else that's very much centered in cultural commentary, getting deeper to the problems, the issues of our times. And in terms of what success I've had, yeah, I think that some of it is that people don't just find what I do funny. There is a deeper meaning to it, a deeper thought about what's going on in the world. And I've tried to make 95% of my comedy have that. So what's great about the fans I do have is they're not fair weather fans. They're not like, oh, he's kind of funny. If his show's in my town, I'll check it out. But instead, people that give a shit about these issues and therefore are really hardcore fans, which is amazing to meet these people because they're all doing their part in their own way to try and make this a better world. So.
Yeah, well, that's the cool thing about once you get an established platform and people kind of recognize you with basically the type of comedian you are. Because I know I've heard a lot of stories about how you start off as doing college shows and stuff like that, and at that time you weren't really a political, you didn't really talk about much with current events or politics or your opinions didn't really come out as much in it. And then as time went by, you got more socially involved and stuff like that, and it's cool because now people go out to see you and they know what Lee Camp's all about. And the cool thing is they're there to see you, they're there to see your message, and so you're not kind of like just surprising somebody. And so that's cool too, because like you said, most of the people who are going to your shows, I'm sure, are politically driven or care about current events and care about what's going on in the world. So I'm sure that's a plus, right? Because you start off doing college shows, and then you kind of sacrifice a little bit of a steady income to kind of take the root of the political issue. I know the Fox News thing is kind of what a lot of people kind of relate you to, which I was trying to attempt not to bring it up because I'm sure you're probably sick of talking about it. But one thing about the Fox News thing, it reminded me of the Patrice O'Neill. Remember when Patrice O'Neill was on Fox News? It was awesome to see like you kind of do the same thing, just kind of go on this news channel and just not really give a shit about what they're trying to what type of show they're putting together, and just go out there and just give some truth. So that was awesome. But,
right.
Yeah.
The similarities between what Patrice and I did is basically that neither of us gave a shit about what Fox News wanted. He was kind of brought on to talk about censorship and, kind of shat all over their censorship rules. I was brought on to tell lame political jokes and instead called them a parade of propaganda. Yeah, I did sacrifice. I mean, I don't know that you can give me 100% credit because it wasn't like I exactly knew I was sacrificing all my college gigs, but I did know that colleges didn't love that stuff as much. I mean, the crowds are largely fine with it. They're a little uninformed about some of the politics, but in general, it wasn't that I wouldn't get laughs. The shows would go great, but it was more that the activities boards didn't want someone that could piss off a portion of the crowd. It was only partially like intentional, like, fuck those guys, I don't give a shit. I'd say that was about 50% of it, and then the other 50% was not realizing that every college in America is not willing to book someone that has an opinion. So.
Well, I think you still deserve some credit because I'm sure that regardless if you did it consciously or not, you definitely didn't care regardless. I think that either way, if they were going to book you or not book you, you probably decide that these issues are more important than being booked or not, and you probably didn't give a shit regardless. So
Yeah, which comes down to the root of like what I talk about in general, and not just comedians, but what a lot of people talk about who have any kind of audience, whether it be rappers or singers or even actors when they're interviewed. Is whether they are worried about, oh my God, I'm going to alienate a certain percentage of my audience. Oh my God, what if an advertiser pulls the plug? What if I lose a sponsor? As soon as that's your every consideration, you stop speaking the truth. And I wish there were more people that are willing to perhaps lose some fans, but probably gain a lot of fans too in the process. There's some great comedians that I really respect. I've become very good friends with a great comic named Ted Alexandro, and he's on Conan tonight, actually. But a lot of his stuff is not political, and his Facebook feed is very political. And I've asked him, are you worried about losing those fans that come to you for the comedy and aren't aware that you're standing up for things like Occupy? And he said, well, you lose a certain number of fans and you gain a certain number back. Gain a certain number of new fans. And so I wish that more people with any kind of outlet would realize that. Mark Ruffalo's done a great job of speaking out against things like fracking, and he's going to lose some fans, but he's going to talk about what's important, and he's going to gain a lot of important fans.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the people who follow you with that journey of kind of saying what you want, I think those are the fans that you want to stick around. And honestly, you probably get anytime you restrict art or you're doing it for the wrong reasons. And comedy, I consider art definitely an art form. And if you're restricting it because of the fear of what people think, I think it ends up censoring it. You don't end up getting a pure form of it. And I think some of the best comedians and really artists in general, musicians or whatnot, have always been very much, just didn't care what people thought and just worried about putting out a work that they were happy with, and that was their top concern. And then if popularity came with it, then that was just a plus. That was just that was just another added thing. And actually at heart, I do music too, and that's the same. It's hard because you can, knowing that you're going to put anything out there, and I'm sure you probably at first probably ran into this issue, that when you're putting stuff out there and you're giving your personal opinions on subjects, at least personally from my point of view, I always had like a little bit of worries of how people are going to take things, and then I realized that like I was putting restrictions on what I was doing, and I wasn't going to get a very good product doing that, and I almost had to write things or produce things in a way like it was only for my personal satisfaction and nobody else going to see it, then put it out and not really worry what people thought. And at least that way I was happy with it. Did you run into something similar?
Yeah. I had to, as I became more political on stage, I had to accept that I was going to lose a portion of the audience and perhaps even lose, it's not easy to get into some of these comedy clubs, to become a regular at some of these clubs in New York City. It's very competitive. And so I had to accept that some of the bookers are not going to book me because they don't want that, they don't want an opinionated guy on their stage. And it wasn't really a decision for me. It wasn't like I had to sit down and think about it long, because I just don't think there's enough time in our world to sit here and not speak about the fucking pillaging we're in the middle of, the ecological collapse we're on the brink of. I don't think there's a lot of time to be like, oh no, I might lose an advertiser. A club might not book me. In my opinion, there's just not a lot of time for that shit. And so I've always kind of swung for the fences in the sense that you get one shot at this, and why not give it your all? Why not do that rather than, oh, I became a nice corporate entity that made me a little more money. It's just not worth it at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I don't know what's gonna happen, but I think like what's going on in Venezuela, what's going on in all these countries, like we assume that like America's immune to it. Like we think that a revolution, like I talk to people sometimes and people are like, oh, what happened in Egypt can't happen here, or what's happening in Ukraine can't happen here. And I'm just like, you guys are naive. I'm like, if you research history, you realize that no country's immune and all empires fall, and it's just when we're not sure. But obviously our dollar's backed by nothing. The Federal Reserve isn't federal at all, and it's not backed by gold, it's not backed by anything, and eventually it is gonna collapse. And people on the left and right, it doesn't matter, because either one, I guess, both all agree kind of that eventually there is going to be a collapse. And and what causes it or what may cause it or whatnot might be in debate. But we do know that eventually, the way things are going, we're going to have issues. And you're on Culture in Decline. I'm a big Peter Joseph fan. I loved Culture in Decline because, kind of like I said in the beginning, like, I think comedy is a great way of getting a point across. And just if you can get somebody to laugh, you might get them to stick around and listen to your opinions, and they might actually take some of it in without ever really knowing that you're giving them something more than just laughs. And Peter Joseph, I know some people think that they're like, oh, it's kind of cultish, it's kind of, or whatever, but I think that you can't take away from the fact that, like you talked about fracking, you look at Fukushima, you look at all these issues, like, to think that it has no effect on the world, and it's not, and we can just keep doing what we're doing and keep living this type of capitalistic type of philosophy where just like, you rape this natural resource until it's gone, then you rape that natural resource until it's gone, and then and then you're just like, oh, we'll worry about it later. Oh, fracking doesn't do anything. It's like it just, to think that we can continue to do that and just worry about short-term profits and not look at the long-term effects. I think it's crazy, and like you said, I think that eventually something is going to happen, and really people need to be aware. And I think that they're maybe not a physical revolution, but I mean Occupy, and I know that you're one of the first people at Occupy and one of the first people there and really into movement. It really, some people give it a hard time because they say, oh, it didn't really have any one topic, but I think that it showed that people were angry and people were becoming aware of the issues. And do you think that all in all, it obviously end up at least doing something, if it wasn't for just consciously knowing that something was wrong and kind of opening eyes to a bunch of people?
Well, so a few things to go back to, whether the U.S. will fall a revolution or whatnot, whether the U.S. Changes its way, backs off the empire by way of some massive revolution or by way of some massive protest or collapse, or it goes a way of slowly backing off the empire to a more sustainable system, to a more sustainable way of living. Which one of those happens isn't really the point. The point is what you kind of got to a little bit later was that. This is not sustainable. You don't. I can't find anyone to speak to who thinks the way we live is sustainable. Even if you're a climate change denier, you're not listening to scientists. But my larger point is that they still know that the Pacific is filling with plastic, and that we lose 10,000 species of animal a year. Like, you don't have to believe in climate change to realize it's not sustainable what we're doing. And so there is no way this can go on forever. In order for everyone to live like we live in America, you would need 5 Earths, and we don't have that. So it's something's got to give. Now, it could give over long term. It could be 20 years of slowly backing off the position we've put ourselves in. But whatever it is, something's got to give. In terms of Occupy, I think people are completely kidding themselves if they think it didn't have an effect. It was the first ever global leaderless protest movement in the history of mankind, and over a span of only 2 months. Keep in mind, things like civil rights took a decade. In the span of 2 months, it completely changed the conversation in America from one of austerity, one of the average man needs to cut back, to one of why the fuck is there insane income disparity, insane wealth disparity, and why is all the wealth and the resources getting extracted into not even just the top 1%, but really the top 0.1%. It completely changed everything in terms of the way we think about this country and this world. And now that doesn't mean the media didn't have big successes, and the brutal police did have big successes in undermining it and eventually stopping the tactic of occupying squares. But in general, it had a massive effect and woke most of America up to both the income disparity and police brutality. So I agree with what you were saying there about it doesn't necessarily need to be a physical revolution. It's kind of a thought revolution I think we're in the middle of. and it's slow, so you don't notice it day to day. It doesn't mean everyone wakes up at once. It means that over the span of a decade or 20 years, people are waking up to the way this country actually works, to the way power actually works, to the way unfettered capitalism puts a profit margin on everything, puts a price on everything. Human life comes down to a price. You know, pollution comes down to a price. None of it, nothing is ever done out of a caring for humanity or for life or for people. It's only a combination of what's the profit and could we get caught. Those are the only considerations.
Yeah, yeah, and you've talked about it before. Actually, before I move on to another subject, one thing that it reminded me of Occupy is, remember that movie in the '70s, Network, when he tells. Yeah, one of my favorite movies, and he tells everybody, go outside your window and let everybody know you're mad as hell. And it's one of those things where, like, people went outside individually, everybody was thinking the same thing, but nobody said it. But once everybody went outside to their window, they realized that all their neighbors were thinking the same thing. And Occupy was kind of a similar thing. It's like we all knew that things were unfair, that this whole idea of, well, if you just work hard, then you move on up to the next social class, which isn't actually, it doesn't exist at all. I mean, very few people, if at all, who are rich aren't already born into a rich family.
Well, and when people say that, like, oh, you just work hard, do you honestly believe that a hedge fund manager is working 100, 1,000, 10,000 times as hard as a janitor? Like, the argument is totally preposterous.
Oh, absolutely.
A hedge fund, the best hedge fund managers make more in a day than the average family makes in 50 years. And do they honestly believe that that guy is working so hard in that one day that it equates to 50 years of work for you or me?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you look at Foxconn, you look at any third world country that that has these sweatshops and factories. I mean, you can't say these people aren't successful because they're not working hard. They're working most of their lives away, and that's why Foxconn has nets outside their windows, because of the suicide rate. So just so we can get our cheap brand new phones, and and then we can get a reasonable price for them. But you're absolutely right. I mean, it definitely doesn't have anything to do with how hard you work. I think that unfortunately things are stacked against basically it's the rich and everybody else. Like, there's people always talk about welfare or whatnot. I mean, there's welfare for for corporations. They get tax breaks. They get they get tons of help from the government. So
even the big banks, and this was in Forbes, so this isn't some crazy lefty publication. This was in Forbes. The big banks, if you took away the subsidies, if you took away the interest rates that they get, the advantages on interest rates and everything else from the federal government, they would barely break even in the amount of money they make. And they make billions and billions of dollars a year. They would break even if you took those subsidies away. So basically, all of the money that the big banks earn, in terms of profits, is just a money laundering between the taxpayer into the pockets of the stockholders and the CEOs. That's the only thing that big banks do, because it's all coming from federal subsidy.
Yeah, no, I that's crazy, and I think I read that too, and but that's why people like Peter Schiff and people like that bother me, because it's like they just, I know he went down to Occupy and he's just telling people that, oh, you should be angry at the government, you shouldn't be angry at corporations, but they're one and the same. Like, they both are polluted by corrupt people. Like, the idea that and a lot of times I'm a big Ron Paul fan. I believe in a lot of the libertarian views, but when the whole idea of just having a free market and it will fix itself, the whole Ayn Rand type of philosophy, I don't think it's realistic. Like, I don't think it's government that makes people corrupt. I think people are always susceptible of being corrupt, and then that makes government corrupt. And same thing with people are, if they're corrupt.
Right.
I think corrupt people are going to find a way to cut corners and screw people and not, and put morals underneath profits, and so I don't
Right.
think. Yep.
I mean, capitalism heads towards a bubble mentality, and then those bubbles collapse. And the more unfettered it is, the quicker those bubbles inflate, and the harder they collapse. And you're absolutely right that any system you have is going to have a certain number of people that are the psychopaths who want billions of dollars for themselves and are willing to do just about anything to get it. Just like you can have any type of system, you're still going to have people who have shoe fetishes. There's still going to be people who want to fuck a shoe. So there's still going to be a certain number of people that want billions of dollars to themselves at the expense of everyone else.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And we've talked to people that believe, that if you got rid of government or money in government, then it would fix the issue. Corporations regulate themselves, and you have people who think that if you just end up, putting more restrictions on bigger government, put more restrictions, that would help. And I think that they try to make everything a black and white issue. It's this you have to pick a team. You have to pick conservative or liberal, Democrat or Republican, and I just think that there's always a gray area, and I think that we shouldn't be picking teams, because what happens once you pick a team is that you're stuck having to agree with everything that team agrees on, and
which is a great means of controlling us, and it's what drives me nuts. For a long time I was a Democrat, and I agree with a lot of things on the Democrat platform, but when they're completely corrupted by corporations and by money, as they are now, half of Congress is now millionaires, so we literally live in a plutocracy of millionaires. When they're completely corrupted, you have to look outside that and be smart enough to say, oh, I may agree with some things written on a paper that say Democrat next to them, but these people don't stand for this. It's not what it is, and therefore I'm smart enough to not keep supporting them and voting for them. So when people who maybe helped get Obama elected cannot look outside the fact that he, all the reasons that he is no different from the last guy, the largest surveillance ever, the largest number of drone attacks ever, the largest prosecution of whistleblowers ever. If you can't look and see that, then you're not looking at proof. You're not allowing proof to change your opinion, which is a huge problem in this country. If you can have an opinion, but as Bill Nye said when he debated the creationist Ken Ham, they said, what would make you change your opinion? And he said, scientific proof. And then they asked Ken Ham, what would make you change your opinion? And he said, nothing. That's the difference between being a logical human being and being an ideologue that will not change no matter what.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I think that, that's the big problem, is that they make you, and that's why they never want a third party. They never want, it's this whole idea of Dunkin' or Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts, Pepsi or Cola. It's like Democrat, Republican. They make you feel like you have an option because you have two, but you really don't have an option. They're both getting paid.
The sidelining of third parties is, again, one of the most powerful ways of controlling us. And I realize this is old news, but I will keep repeating it until everyone knows it. On the night of the New York debate, Jill Stein, who I supported in the last election, for the Green Party, yep. She went to the Democratic debate. The left is supposed to be the left-wing debate, and tried to. Oh no, never mind. It was the presidential debate. So it was all sides of the presidential ticket, right? And it was just Obama and Romney. She and her vice presidential candidate showed up at Hofstra to participate in the debate. They promptly arrested her and her vice president candidate and handcuffed them to a chair in a room with an armed guard for the entirety of the debate. And this is a 65-year-old woman who's about 5'2", and she said to the armed guard, "Listen, we're not going to leave. You're blocking the door anyway. Can you just unhandcuff us from these chairs? They hurt." And he said no. Wow. So that's what we do to third parties when they try and act as part of the conversation, part of the dialogue.
Yeah, and I heard about that, and I watched. They had a debate online. I think Johnson, I think she was there. I think a couple people were there. They had like an online debate with all the third parties, and
yeah, that was actually done by Free and Equal, which they're one of these organizations trying to get us outside of the two-party system. So people should look up Free and Equal.
Yeah, and I thought it was awesome. It was a way better debate. I mean, you look at you watch the Democratic debate, and I'm with you. Growing up, I was more of a Democrat, more because of the social issues. It wasn't so much that I understood really foreign policy or anything at the time. It was more just because I could relate with the social issues.
Right.
And I think that's what attracted me to it, but they did the same thing to Ralph Nader, actually. Now that it reminds me of the Ralph Nader story when he was
Nader, Ron Paul,
Yeah, how Ron Paul, how they just, accidentally forget to bring them up every time they're talking about the debates, every time they had just who was.
Well, they literally in some of these caucuses, I think it was Maine or somewhere, they literally changed numbers just blatantly. The guy who counted the numbers on a pad called up and said, "I see you're reporting on the news that Ron Paul didn't win this one, but he did. I'm holding the piece of paper." And they said, "No, sorry, we got the numbers already." And he said, I'm holding the numbers, and it didn't matter. They put in their own numbers. They also canceled one of the districts. They canceled the voting in one of the districts up somewhere in the Northeast because it was a district that Ron Paul was supposed to win, and they said they couldn't hold the vote because of rain.
Wow. That's the thing. Like, it almost feels like if you don't end up taking money from corporations, then there's no, like, to become president, you have to be already, basically be okay with the system and the way things work. It's I'm a big House of Cards fan, and they had Kevin Spacey talked about how talking to a lot of insiders and stuff like that, people said that show's about 99% accurate. And
Yeah, it is. Hey, man, unfortunately, this has to be the last question. I got to run in a second.
Hey, sorry for holding you up, but hey, thanks for being with us, and we'll have to have you on again, and you got a future show coming up, right? You got you're doing a DVD, right? You're doing some shows in New York, and you're recording.
Yeah, I'm taping my first comedy special in 2 years at Bowery Electric in New York City on March 16th. And then that's almost sold out, so we have an encore show March 17th. And if people want tickets, if you're in New York City, want to come see a full hour of my political comedy, go to leecamp.net, and you can click on the schedule tab. Yeah, and everybody, I'd love to keep in touch with everybody. I'm at leecamp.net, and then also facebook.com/leecampcomedian.
Yeah, and check out his videos, Moment of Clarity. You do a couple of them a week, right?
Yeah, I do usually one or two of those a week, and then I also put some other clips up there. I'm kind of always trying to get the news out there in a funny, different kind of way.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I just want to thank you for being with us today. It was awesome hitting on all the topics, and definitely check out Lee Camp. There's a reason why it seems like a lot of Bill Hicks and George Carlin fans like me and Greg Giraldo fans and stuff are a fan of Lee Camp. So if you're a fan of those guys, definitely check them out. And thanks again, Lee. We'll keep in touch and keep up the good work. I'm sure I'll probably see you on one of the RT shows coming up.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. Keep doing what you're doing.
Hey, thanks, Lee. Have a good one.
You too.